Hi guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Reading Corner. And today we're going to carry on with The Magician's Nephew. And sorry, it's been a while since the last episode of Reading Corner, but we're going to carry. And I've got a cold, so sorry if I talk a bit differently. But we're going to read the Complete Chronicles of Narnia. We're going to do and carry on with The Magician's Nephew. If you don't remember where we left off, you can check from our last video. So yeah, okay, let's go. What about it? Why, it's the empty one. Daddy said it's always been empty since we came here. I suppose we ought to have a look at it then, said Diggory. He was a good deal more excited than you'd have thought from the way he spoke. For of course he was thinking, just as you would have been, of all the reasons why the house might have been empty so long. So was Polly. Neither of them said the word haunted, and both felt that once the thing had been suggested, it would be feeble not to do it. Shall we go and try it now, said Diggory. All right, said Polly. Don't if you'd rather not, said Diggory. I'm game if you are, said she. How are we to know we're in the next house but one? They decided they would have to go out into the box room and walk across it, taking steps as long as the steps from one rafter to the next. That would give them an idea of how many rafters went to a room. Then they would allow about 4 more for the passage between the 2 attics and Polly's house, and then the same number for the maid's bedroom as for the box room. That would give them the length of the house. When they had done that distance twice, they would be at the end of Diggory's house. Any door they came to after that would let them into an attic of the empty house. But I don't expect it's really empty at all, said Diggory. What do you expect? I expect someone lives there in secret, only coming in and out of night with a dark lantern. We shall probably discover a gang of desperate criminals and get a reward. It's all rot to say a house would be empty all those years unless there was some mystery. Dad thought it must be the drain, said Polly. Pooh! Grown-ups are always thinking of uninteresting explanations, said Diggory. Now that they were talking by daylight in the attic, instead of the candlelight in the smuggler's cave, it seemed much less likely that the empty house would be haunted. When they had measured the attic, they had to get a pencil and do a sum. They both got different answers to it at first, and even when they agreed, I am not sure they got it right. They were in a hurry to start on the exploration. We mustn't make a sound, said Polly, as they climbed in again behind the cistern. Because it was such an important occasion, they took a candle each. Polly had a good store of them in her cave. It was very dark and dusty and draughty, and they stepped from rafter to rafter without a word except when they whispered to one another, We're opposite your attic now, or this must be halfway through our house. And neither of them stumbled, and the candles didn't go out. And at last they came to where they could see a little door in the brick wall on their right. There were no bolt or handle on this side of it, of course, for the door had been made for getting in, not for getting out. But there was a catch, as there often is on the inside of a cupboard door, which they felt sure they would be able to turn. Shall I? said Diggory. I'm game if you are, said Polly, just as she had said before. Both felt they was becoming very serious, but neither would draw back. Diggory pushed around the catch with some difficulty. The door swung open, and the sudden daylight made them blink. Then, with a great shock, they saw that they were looking not into a deserted attic, but into a furnished room. But it seemed empty, though. It was dead silent. Polly's curiosity got the better of her. She blew out her candle and stepped out into the strange room, making no more noise than a mouse. It was shaped, of course, like an attic, but furnished as a sitting room. Every bit of the walls was lined with shelves, and every bit of the shelves was full of books. A fire was burning in the grate. You remember that it was a very cold, wet summer that year, and in front of the fireplace, with his back towards them, was a high-backed armchair. Between the chair and Polly, and filling most of the middle of the room, was a big table piled with all sorts of things, printed books, and books of all sorts you'd write in, and ink bottles, and pens, and sealing wax, and a microscope. But what she noticed first was a bright red wooden tray with a number of rings on it. They were in pairs, a yellow one and a green one together, then a little space, and then another yellow one and another green one. They were no bigger than ordinary rings, and no one could help noticing them because they were so bright. They were the most beautiful, shiny little things you can imagine. If Polly had been a very little younger, she would have wanted to put one in her mouth. The room was so quiet that you noticed the ticking of the clock at once. And yet, as she now found, it was not absolutely quiet either. There was a very, very faint humming sound. If hoovers had been invented in those days, Polly would have thought it was the sound of a hoover being worked a long way off, several rooms away and several floors below. But it was a nicer sound than that, a more musical tone, only so faint that you could hardly hear it. "It's all right, there's no one here," said Polly, over her shoulder to Diggory. She was speaking above a whisper now, and Diggory came out, blinking and looking extremely dirty, as indeed Polly was too. "This is no good," he said. "It's not an empty house at all. We'd better bunk before anyone comes." "What do you think those are?" said Polly, pointing at the coloured rings. "Oh, come on," said Diggory. The sooner he never finished what he was going to say, for at that moment something happened. The high-backed chair in front of the fire moved suddenly, and there rose up out of it, like a pantomime demon coming up out of a trap-door, the alarming form of Uncle Andrew. They were not in the empty house at all. They were in Diggory's house, and in the forbidden study. Both children said, "Uh-oh," and realized their terrible mistake. They felt they ought to have known all along that they hadn't gone nearly far enough. Uncle Andrew was tall and very thin. He had a long, clean-shaven face with a sharply pointed nose and extremely bright eyes and a great tousled mop of grey hair. Diggory was quite speechless, for Uncle Andrew looked 1,000 times more alarming than he had ever looked before. Polly was not so frightened yet, but she soon was, for the very first thing Uncle Andrew did was to walk across to the door of the room, shut it, and turn the key in the lock. Then he turned around, fixed the children with his bright eyes, and smiled, showing all his teeth. "There," he said. "Now my fall-off sister can't get at you." It was dreadfully unlike anything a grown-up would be expected to do. Polly's heart came into her mouth, and she and Diggory started backing towards the little door they had come in by. Uncle Andrew was too quick for them. He got behind them and shut that door too, and stood in front of it. Then he rubbed his hands and made his knuckles crack. He had very long, beautifully white fingers. Okay guys, the video is 9 minutes long. We'll end the video there. We'll almost reach chapter 2, but we'll end the video there, and smash the notification bell, subscribe so you don't miss episode 3. Peace.